Hello, everybody. I'll give you a few minutes to get onto this call, but just wanted to start things off so we can have you all jump in. It's Jeff here, coming at you from Portugal, city of Porto. So hopefully you can see me, and when you get on, let me know. Hey, Sean, how you doing? Excellent. I was just going to see if anybody's on. I got your responses, Sean, so I'm glad you're on so we can talk about some of your responses. It seems like it's going to be a pretty light one again. I know last time we did this about 3 weeks ago now. It must have been the summertime, the dog days of summer, and I think we're still going through it now. And so, Sean, depending on who else joins us, it looks like Peter's on as well. I had some people email me last minute and said they got caught up in other meetings or they had to cancel. So I'm not sure how many people will be on this, but I'm doing well, Sean. Good to see you. Anybody else, if you get on, feel free to use the chat. Let me know when you're on. It looks like we have a couple people on right now. I see Peter and Sean. So it's just the two of you right now. And I'm not super hopeful we're going to have a lot more than you two. I know some people will jump in, but do either of you guys, since it's going to be basically just me chatting with you two, do either of you guys want to get on camera and talk and sort of do the webcam thing with me, or would you rather just ask any questions you have through the chat? Either one is fine with me, but I think since we have a small group today, might as well make it a good one. It looks like Jason just jumped on as well. So Jason, the same offer goes for you. If anybody wants to talk to me through the webcams, we're going to put that option out there. I actually did I did a webinar either last week or the week before with somebody, and we both were on webcam, and I thought it went pretty well. So the option's out there for you guys. If you want to use your webcam and get out there with me, we're going to get you there. So, yeah, I understand, Peter. That's why I usually don't open up the camera thing, because sometimes people are not in a good spot to chat. So if you guys aren't in a good spot to chat, no problem. Yeah, I think Jason just jumped on. So we have a small group today. So awesome. Well, come up with those questions, get them ready to go in your mind. I'm going to go through the survey just to go through these answers. It's going to be a pretty quick one because a lot of you are just, what we call freelancers. The majority of you, one of you is a dreamer, somebody who's basically just getting started or thinking about where they want to go. And then a couple people who are employers with employees. But everybody wants to obviously grow their agency in the future. So that's always a good thing to see that people want to grow. As far as entities go, half are LLCs, 2 S Corps. Another one's a UK corporation, which is similar to what we'd call like an S corporation, and one's a sole proprietorship. Remember, this lesson, this call is supposed to be around the time that we just did, or I'm not sure how far you are in the lessons, but this is around the legal business for forming and the entities and everything, and what type of business do you have. Majority, obviously, when you ask these questions and you say, what are you in there, freelancer, then the answer is going to be there's no partners. So as obviously the majority have no partners. Do you have strategic partnerships with other agencies? The majority say no. Some say yes. I would obviously say that a strategic partnership can be a really good way to complement your services, to be good for generating new business coming in, and can always be a good thing. And also you have to make sure that it, see how it affects your margins and how it affects your business. So it has two sides to that sword. So if anybody, obviously that's a good question point. If you have questions about agencies, feel free to ask away. And you can ask them now, and I'll get to them once we get to that part. Who makes the decisions? This is one of those ones where if everybody's a freelancer, then they're going to be, and they have no business partners, they are going to be the ones who make the decision. So there's not really much to go there. People don't have a board formed yet. That's okay. Something to do later on. Do you have a buy-sell agreement? Obviously, you don't really need a buy-sell agreement if you're an individual, if you're just a freelancer. If it's just you, then you don't need an agreement to buy and sell with your partners. And that's what we're specifically talking about, is with your business partners. Now, if somebody wanted to buy your business, then you absolutely would have a buy-sell agreement with them, but it would be a little bit different than what we talked about in the lessons. What are your thoughts on exiting your agency? Half say it's a lot of work you can do before you sell. The other half basically say it's in the back of my mind, but not influential. And then one says, my agency is probably not worth anything. And the reality is that all these are good, valid answers, is that for any agency, especially, depending on your phase, and almost everybody who answered this is in the freelancer phase, it's going to be like, okay, yeah, at some point you might be able to sell, but there's a lot of work to be done. So I think that they're all sort of supporting that, and then people on the live coaching call. And so that's really all that we got for responses. This is, like I said, it's the dog days of summer. That's all I can attribute it to. Or people are busy, some stuff's going on. So if you do have something going on, or if you want to tell me what's going on, we can talk about that too. This is obviously my time for you guys. And so looking at the control panel, we only have a handful of people on the call. And so let's just make this time the best we can have it. There's some free form answers that we got from the survey from some of you that are on the call. So I just wanted to share that too, just to see if it brings up any ideas for us. And that's first one's around decision-making process. And basically, whenever they make a decision, they're basically saying they filter out the different options that are in front of them. And then they say, do these decisions fit our mission, vision, and values of the business? And then for the most important ones, consult a volunteer advisory board to get their thoughts. And they usually do a good job of reeling him back in and making sure that he's meeting his own growth goals according to the timeline he's laid out. So I think that's good. I like this. So what we're talking about here is, if you're making a major decision and you're stressing over it, one, does it fit into the defined mission, vision, and values of your business? Most businesses don't have these defined, or they're very loosely defined. And so the fact that you have that already is pretty awesome. I mean, that's really a solid thing. And so you can always fall back on that, but then it's not always easy to fall back on just that. So you want to ask advisors, people who are interested in helping you, just people who are willing to help you out and provide you with advice along the way. So I definitely have those types of informal advisors that I talk to. And then I talk to as many people as I can when I'm stressing over a big decision as well. Although sometimes you just know that that's what you need to do as well. So it's a little bit of both, actually. I think that's probably the way that I'd say it, is that there's no perfect framework, but definitely getting opinions and then saying, how does this fit in with how we want to run our organization is a good way to go. Another one is about what makes your agency unique. And so this one's saying, for B Corps and social enterprises, the more that need a more fluid relationship with their marketing communications partner, we manage marketing programs that enable clients to amplify their social impact. Unlike traditional marketing agencies, our approach allows clients to insource specialty skills instead of outsourcing projects. And we also share an unrelenting commitment to creating positive social change. So I like that this is the same person who responded about the values piece and the mission and vision. And I think that it's nice to see that you're basically stand for something, right? Your company stands for what it is and what it does. And then also you've clarified the value proposition for the people who are your clients. And so that's a really good thing to do. So for those of you who are listening along who didn't get a chance to fill out the survey or didn't provide answers, think about it from that perspective. And that is basically, when you're doing things and when you're talking about what makes your company unique, think about the things that you do that is either rare, uncommon, or that makes you feel good, that makes you feel accomplished. And then also, how does that make your client feel? How do your clients feel? And so think about it from that perspective. And so that's it for the pre-canned portion of this. It's a really quick one. And so I want to just get into your questions. And so Sean, I see that you have a question about strategic partnerships. So let's hear it. Fire away. And I know this is on a little bit of a delay, so just when you're ready, feel free to type it in. Okay, so this is a good one. I like this one a lot, Sean. So, Sean, I'm just going to read it out loud, and then we'll go from there. And I might have to turn on my webcam and see. There's my webcam. Okay. So Sean's saying that he works with a digital agency that subs out the analytics work to him, which is not the main piece of the business. It's a small piece, but the main business is social impact enterprise space, which, you and I have talked about this already as well, Sean. And this digital agency that you work with, they have bigger brand agencies on their client roster. Okay. And so what's the best way to approach those agencies to explore partnerships? And then, basically saying, to clarify, these bigger brand agencies are also in the social impact space. So Sean, let me throw a few ideas out there, and as I go through them, if you need to clarify or anything, just feel free to put it in the chat window. So I love this. I mean, I like when you're getting started out, going where the business is as much as you possibly can. And so there's big agencies who have the advantage of winning big clients. Generally speaking, at least in my experience, when you're just a one-person shop or a small shop, it's going to be really difficult to land big fish. And even if you have the best networking and business development skills in the world, it's going to be hard to land those big fish, because big companies want to have this perception that they're going to have a lot of people working on their business. They're going to have redundancy on your team. They're going to have experts. They're going to have the resources. That's the number one word I've ever heard big companies use. Like when I work with Fortune 500 companies, they're obsessed with resources. Which agencies can have the resources needed in order to accomplish what we want to accomplish? And so they obsess over the amount of resources available, even though the biggest resource is money, and money is what ends up talking. It's like, if you pay me the same amount of money you'd pay a big agency, I'll find the resources. Of course, they don't like hearing that, or you don't actually tell that to the client or the prospective client. But anyway, so yeah, you're not going to go directly with these big relationships. You're going to have to either grow your company or suck it up and be like a subcontractor for a while. And so, yes, it's hard to grow the big ones directly unless you just are so good at something, or if you have this relationship that transcends the concept of not having enough resources. So doing what you're doing right now is a good way to go. So working with other agencies and sort of being staff augmentation and just seeing what they'll give you. But as you've probably already discovered, that's not always the best deal. It's never the best deal for you unless that a company just doesn't know how to bill you out or whatever. Usually you're not going to get the rate that you're looking for. Also, you don't have a relationship with the client. You don't really have the opportunity to take it anywhere. And if you do have an opportunity to talk to the client, usually they're going to have a no poaching clause in your subcontract, some kind of like, you can't take that client with you type thing. So, and actually that's a point of clarification that I have for you is that the parameter you're under. So you work for this company and you're getting exposed to other people. Is it legal for you to do that, to talk to these people? Is it frowned upon? Is it welcomed? And what's the nature of that relationship? Now, personally, I've been a sub of a sub many times. Like, that was how I got started in this whole business in the agency world, was I was a subcontractor of a subcontractor. So me as a one person went to a small agency, which I now own part of that agency, went to Nestle, like one of the biggest food companies in the world, or the biggest food company in the world. We worked with them. And so I never really talked to them directly, but I worked on their business. Now, I never ever thought it was a good idea for me to go out there and start pitching these Nestle people directly. But what I did was I could use it in other ways. So I could tell people that I worked in this business. I could use it as a way to like make me seem a lot bigger than I really was, that I was a lot more knowledgeable. And so that might be something you can do from it. So maybe there's never a good way because of the contract you have or the relationship you have to ever try to poach the client away, the bigger client, or to take them away. But it doesn't mean you can't say that you worked with them or that you worked on their business or that you understand what their needs are. It doesn't mean that you can't be friends with them on LinkedIn. There's ways you can cultivate a relationship without making it purely business oriented, right? It doesn't have to only be based on it doesn't have to be transactional right now to form a relationship with this bigger company that you want to have on your target. But it doesn't, and it also doesn't mean that you might get revenue from it ever, but it is valuable. And it's something that you can just take the temperature as to what this is, what you're working on and whether it's a good idea to, propel that relationship with the bigger one to sacrifice the relationship you have with the smaller or the company who's subbing out work to you. And then how does it fit into your overall plan? Now, those relationships that I built ended up becoming, opportunities on the line. As people would leave Nestle, they'd look me up and they'd want to work with me. I've done a lot of stuff still from people that I used to work with at that point in time. I never went directly and tried to undermine my company's contract with Nestle, but I definitely built relationships. I did all these things I'm talking about. And so maybe that's one way to look at it, is to say, I can build relationships without making it purely transactional, and then just build up your overall brand, make people familiar with you. And so when they move on or when the environment changes, then that can be how it goes. Now, that's another funny story, is that the way that the Nestle contract was given to the people who I became partners with was that they actually, Nestle fell out of favor with their previous agency and they fired them. They fired their other agency, and they had this technology in place that they needed somebody to work on. And the two people who were the founders of my agency, they said, okay, we can do that. And so this big company ended up working with them, with a 2-person company who just got established like 2 days before that. They ended up working with them because they didn't really need to worry about the resources, because they needed immediacy. And so that was one way. That was like an exception to the rule, but that was how that ended up happening. So basically, if you're working with something or you're working on something and then the people fall out of favor, you're going to be the one to pick up the pieces. And so I should have said, I don't think I clarified in there, but the guys who founded my agency were subcontractors of the people who got fired. And then once that other bigger agency, which is actually Hallmark greeting cards of all companies, once Hallmark got fired, they just like gave the contract over to these two guys, and that started 3D Marketing. So that's our agency origin story. Anyway, so that might be the longest story ever told about something, but I think it's beneficial to see where these things play out. It's like, it's a slow play. Now, it's not in the contract, but we definitely frown upon. I don't have any relationship with the end clients, brand agencies, and their clients. Yeah. So do you want to have a relationship? Is it feasible to do that? And what can you get out of it? Those are the types of questions I'd probably ask myself if I were you then. It's like, the frown upon piece is, you sort of have to just assess the situation. Like, I personally don't like to poach clients over, but if there's a relationship where I know that it's not the relationship that I want to have in the long term, if they're not giving me a favorable rate, or if they're not throwing the best projects at me, or if it seems unstable, then I don't value that relationship as much as I would if somebody was a true partner, somebody who was truly treating me well. And so, doesn't mean that I go and steal their clients away from them. I still don't do that, but it doesn't mean that I wouldn't listen to those clients or try to start a relationship. And so you have to sort of draw this line between these things, like what's innocent and what's potential to steal away the business. So one of the first things I ever do is, like, when I'm on a call and I'm subbing stuff out, is if somebody announces themselves in the conference call, I look them up on LinkedIn and I see who they are and I see what they have to do. And I might even connect with them or they might see that I looked at their profile and they might connect with me. I do a lot of things just to really understand what I'm dealing with, because I think it helps me do you do work better when you know who you're dealing with. And also you have the more information you have, the better chance, and the more connections you have, the better it's going to last you in the long run. And so, yeah, I don't know if I would, I don't know if this is, tell me if I'm answering your question, Sean, first of all. Like, if this is not answering the question, or if there's something that I missed, please do chime in. But I don't see why you wouldn't just ride it out and see what you can get from it. That's my advice on this one, is just to see where it leads. Doesn't seem like you really lose anything either way. But also, I think loyalty around, like, when you're a subcontractor is something where you have to thread the needle, because if you don't have to like give up your ability to thrive in business. You don't have to give up all your your future because somebody gave you a $500 a month contract. Like, there's, or something like that. So I don't know the situation of the contract, but if it's not a big piece of your business, you don't really owe them much. You're doing exactly what they asked you to do. And if they don't have it protected by the contract, then you have some stuff to play with. Now, I'm not advocating, and I wouldn't advocate that anybody goes out there and poaches clients. But what I would advocate is developing a relationship with that client if the need presents itself, or telling the people you're subbing for that you'd be better off if you could be the one leading the calls and giving your insights versus just delivering a report to them and then having them call it out. So there's a lot of ways you can approach this thing. Obviously, I don't know. I'm just reading text on a screen, so I don't know exactly the nuance of what you're dealing with in your relationship. But those are some ways that I would treat it. And, I don't know, you probably have some follow-ups, so feel free to put it in the chat window. And everybody else who's on, let's hear your follow-ups as well. I'm going to call you out by name because there's not a lot of you. So we have Jason and Peter. Any thoughts on here? Anything you want to talk about? I'm going to get some water. Now, this is brilliant, by the way. This agency in Minneapolis, Rocket 55, they handed out these bottles at MN Search, which is the conference that we put on in Minneapolis every year. And I've been carrying this thing around ever since, and it's pretty awesome. That's like, branded water bottles are a really good idea. It's in one of the lessons, actually. That's what we ended up doing with Nestle. We had our branded water bottles, and they just loved it. It was everywhere. Everywhere you go, there'd be a 3D marketing water bottle sitting around Nestle. I think they still have them. And actually, they fought over them. They're like, I want one. I want one. So that was one of our favorite tactics out there. Yeah, Peter, there's no pressure to ask questions. It's just that no pressure at all, guys. So yeah, Jason's saying doing partnerships with other agencies is a pain because you're doing double the account management. Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you're managing them as an account and then you're also managing the client, or if you're managing the misinformation, all that type of stuff, it can be frustrating. I think, it goes both ways, right? As you develop your company, when you call on a contractor, I think you're going to get the best results when you work with a contractor for your business. And I'm going through this right now. I'll share a story since we're not getting a lot of questions in. But I personally, for my business, I got proposals from 2 different copywriters, and one from a friend who's he works at Lead Pages, and he was doing some side jobs for me. He wanted to do some consulting for me. And so I got 3 proposals in front of me, and it was sort of interesting to see how people are proposing to me. And it's funny, but all of them had a big piece of the contract was like them discovering how to work with me, which, I mean, I would actually advise that if bill for your discovery time. But then I started thinking about it from a business owner perspective. Do I want to spend, if I would have added up the discovery fee from all 3 of these people, I think each one of them was like $1,500 or $2,000 just to discover something, right? So it's sort of funny that that these people that they wanted to me to pay them to discover my business. And it's like, okay, well, if you're using contractors, yes, if I'm requiring their time to discover these things, it should be at that point. But wouldn't you think that's a way that you can is somebody who's in the middle. Couldn't I have like given them that information for free or as part of the or as part of the process in vetting them? And so I started to think with my own interactions, how, you know, obviously they want to get as whatever they can get paid for, but how do I get the most out of the people who are working for me on my business? And then also if I'm the contractor, how do I do the same for my clients? You know, for example, if I do a subcontract where I'm doing Google Analytics type stuff, I do charge sometimes for discovery work. Although it's funny, I mean, generally speaking, that's sort of implied in the contract. Like when I'm doing discrete projects, I don't need to do a ton of discovery because it's not a custom job. It's like if I'm looking at your Google Analytics account, it's basically, you know, the same, right? So when I look at a Google Analytics account for one company or another, I pretty much know what their problems are going to be. So I don't need to do a ton of discovery. I just sort of look at it in there. So I guess it's implied in my billing. But these three contracts from three different people, they all sort of like had the same, very similar structure. And it was like billing me to figure out what my business actually ends up being. So Peter's wondering what discovery work is. Now, I know we're on a 90 to 120 second delay for sure, people. So sorry about that. But obviously it's when I'm talking, I'll get to your questions as we go along. But for other stuff, yes, it can be frustrating. So discovery work to me ultimately means, so for one example, the first copywriter, she wanted to take a look at all the things that I had written, read through them, and classify them, and learn about my business, interview me, maybe potentially do a survey of users, that type of stuff, and wanted to know more about how my business operated and what I wanted to do. And they think they were going to charge $1,500 for that. Second one, pretty similar. They want to charge $1,500 to look through all the materials that I had, take a look at my Hotjar surveys that had like little responses on it. They wanted to look through my analytics account potentially. They wanted to look at all the surveys that I've done in the past. They wanted to gather as much data as they could so that they were informed with what was going to happen next. And the last one, same thing. So all three of them actually wanted me to pay them for discovery, which was to just look at all the stuff that I have and to come up with something. Now, from a service provider perspective, it's sort of brilliant, right? Like I would pay somebody $1,500 to tell me what I already knew. Like I knew that something's not working. I don't want to pay somebody $1,500 to tell me that. I want them to come up with ideas. And so I'm telling the story because I'm not saying that it's right or wrong to do that. Actually, you should get paid for your time for sure. But it also means that these people have businesses that are so reliant on the client having all their shit together that if the client doesn't have their shit together, they're going to have some troubles, or they're not going to close a lot of deals. Like I think they think they're so in demand or that they're so valuable that every single second should be charged. Whereas, and it rubbed me the wrong way. Actually, I had one call with somebody. They made me do a video call for the sales opportunity, which is really annoying. I hate, oh my God, video calls for a sales opportunity. And then about 2 hours later, she's like, hey, here's a contract. I need 50% down to take the next step. And I was like, whoa, this is the most bold sales tactic I've seen. You know, basically just hit me over the head with this thing after a 30-minute call. And I was like, I don't know what you do. And so I asked her for some more materials. I said, I don't really understand what you do and what you can do for me. And why would I pay you for this thing? That's like the type of stuff that rubs you the wrong way. Like, yes, she probably took some course that said pay $1,500 or, you know, make sure you get a minimum, demand the money up front. And maybe she's successful at it if you do enough, you know, if you do enough outbound business development and enough prospecting. But there's no way I was going to work with this person when they tried to close me before I even knew what they're capable of doing. I didn't get a writing sample, which is important for a writer. I didn't get a sample of what their discovery would do. And they wouldn't price out the rest of it either. They go, oh, well, pricing discovery costs $1,500, and I can't tell you what the rest of it's going to cost until after discovery, which is a pain. Whereas when I do contracts and when I do this type of stuff, I'll often like I do I'll do an hour or two of discovery. I'll do all these things to like pull stuff together. I'll look at their analytics account and then I'll tell them, yes, I can help you out, and it's going to cost this much. Like the biggest problem that a business owner has, and I say this from the perspective of my own, is like uncontrolled costs. Like I'll never sign anything if I don't know what the final all-in cost is going to be, because I don't want to get stuck with somebody, because I know that if they get that foot in the door, then the $1,500, it could easily become $15,000 if I really want the results. And I've had that happen, and it actually doesn't happen to me that much because I'm afraid of it happening to me, and I have to keep penny pinch obviously with the business. And so I don't know, like just I'm going through this stuff because that's what I go through as a business owner. And if you're selling to a business owner, to a company that doesn't have, either they have a budget and the budget is like this much money, and so that's why they want to know the amount you're going to give, or it's their own money, and so it's not budgeted, but it's like coming out of their pocket. Like literally, if I pay, my business and your business as well, all of you, they're small enough businesses where like it's either you give somebody the money or that money is going to go to you, or you're going to pay yourself, or you're going to invest it in something else in your business, right? And so when it comes down to that, you need to have costs under control. Now, it doesn't mean that I didn't learn some things from being pitched. I actually like to sit in on people's pitches just because I just like to see what other people do, how they approach problems. I actually learned a lot. There's some ways that you can, there's some ways you can do really well with a pitch. One is people aren't shy with how much they charge, which is good. The other thing is how people are doing business development, like how are they getting it in there, how they're doing these calls. There's some cool online proposal tools, which piss me off as a consumer, but as a business owner, it might be useful for you guys. For example, one of the copywriters, she sent me a proposal, and it came through via a website. So I had to click on a link in order to view the proposal, and it was like all HTML. It was like a 6-page proposal with like a video in there and stuff. It was sort of cool. But I knew I was being tracked. I knew there's some kind of software that says, Jeff opened up your proposal and he hasn't responded yet. And so I felt like I was on the clock from the second that I got that thing. So that bothered me. But it also can be good depending on the client. Now, it's hard to sell or market to a marketer like myself because I'm skeptical, because I've seen all the crap that we do as marketers. But it's sort of fun to see and to apply these things. And so as we come up with some more lessons for the agency course in the future, one of the things I'm going to do is talk about proposal software and how do you track proposals? How do you use that to your advantage? I've been mentioning in the last few calls how I'm implementing a CRM system and how fascinating that is to see how that works. And so there's all kinds of systems you can use in order to be more efficient with these things. And there's all kinds of prospecting you can do as well. And so I know this is a long drawn out way of talking about discovery and talking about these things, but I think it's sort of fun to see these examples. This is, what to experience being pitched. I would recommend to all of you sit in on some kind of sales call and some kind of opportunity to see how other people are trying to sell to you, and what, is your guard up, and what are they trying to say, and what value are they bringing. It's another thing I'm developing right now for our sales module, which is going to be coming out I hopefully soon, hopefully in August or September, maybe September. The sales module is going to have some things about it's going to talk about some of the, the sales process that I went through, how my deck worked, how all these things, how a typical workflow went during the sales process. And so I'm going to share with you some of that. I might even do a pitch to people on as part of the course, one of the videos, trying to sell you on something and see what you think about it. And then another thing, I'm not sure how this is going to work, but at some point I might offer to hear your pitch, or I might link you up with another agency owner, and then you guys can try to pitch each other and tell each other why you would or wouldn't, what that other person needed more of. All right, so I'm gonna pause for air and make sure that I didn't miss any comments here. Yeah, so the wholesale pricing and everything like that, pricing is unfortunate when you do partnerships. That's why you want to go directly to consumer whenever you can, obviously, especially when it's two small agencies. And if one person, let's just keep that $1,500 number. If you normally charge $1,500 for something, and the other agency wants to mark it up, then now you're priced out of the market. Now you're $3,000 for something instead of $1,500, for example. So yeah, your margins, somebody's taking a margin hit, or you're just very expensive because somebody's really good at selling. It's getting darker here, so sorry about that. Let me see if I can do the old trick. Oh, there we go. It's the old brightness on the monitor trick. All right, any other questions or thoughts or comments? You can ask me anything, but it doesn't have to be about the topic of today's call. It can be anything but fashion advice. That's where I draw the line. Awesome. Jason, at what point do I think it makes the most sense to take on a partner? So I have a lot of thoughts on this one because I think about it with my own business too. Is, what do you benefit from having a partner? When should you do it? And all that good stuff. So one reason why you'd want to take on a partner is because of shared responsibility. So if there's that loneliness of being an entrepreneur, of feeling like you're the only one, you have the sole responsibility, all the weight on your shoulders, having a partner can make that feel, you can have some kind of, it's not so much relief because it doesn't necessarily go away, but at least it's, somebody's in it with you. So that's one advantage of having a partner. That's one nice thing. So if you have that feeling every day when you get to work that like it's all on you, and you want some of that relief, then that might be a time that you want to take on a partner. Generally speaking, if you're already established and you've already built up a nice business, then you probably then the value seems to be a little bit less valuable. So if you already are doing a couple 100,000 in revenue or whatever, then do you need a partner? You've already got over some of the first humps, which is replacing your old income. But a partner might bring other values. It might bring value like succession planning. Like if you like ever want to get out of your business, maybe somebody buying into part of your business or taking over eventually 100%, that's a reason why you'd want to take on a partner. So that's maybe later on down the line. Another one is complementary skills. Like if you know that you're only good at certain things and that's debilitating, it's not working well for your business because you're only good at certain things. For example, if you have a great financial mind, but you can't sell anything for the life of you, then that might be and you find, somebody who you've worked with before. Generally, I'd say, I think the stat is like 75 or 80% of business owners who are partners or had worked together at some point or knew each other previously. So you don't really just get matched up randomly with partners. You sort of have a working relationship with somebody, and then it makes sense. Now, one of the things that I talk people out of all the time, freelancers, is just because you're two freelancers does not mean that you should be partners by any means. Especially when I say complementary skills, if your skills are only complementary as far as you do web design and somebody else does PPC, that is not a good idea for a partnership, from my experience, because what you do at your agency is like the third most important thing. I know it sounds weird to say that, but basically the third most important thing that you have is what your agency actually does. Number one most important thing is sales, by far, hands down, is how many people are buying from you. Sales cures everything. Sales is like the lifeblood of everything. Number two, it's basically let's see, it's like the financial pieces of it. Just making sure that you have somebody who's responsible for finances and that everything is profitable. So sales one, profit two. Those two things are really important. And then the third thing is what you actually do, delivering the work to your clients. Because if you have great account management and other skills, then yes, subpar work will sometimes be more profitable than doing the best work in the world. Now, that sounds terrible. I've been in this industry for a long time and I've seen a lot of really bad agencies make a lot of money. Actually, most of the advertising agencies I've worked with are pretty terrible at what they do, but they are able to print money because they have a great sales team and a great reputation. And so uh, that's sort of the order of importance. So when I think about taking on a partner, I obviously evaluate those criteria. So if you're working with somebody and it's a natural fit and things are going well, then that's a good time to take on a partner. If you are really good at something that's not sales, since sales is that high in the importance list, then yes, you should take on a partner if possible. Because if you bought a salesperson, like if you hired a salesperson to sell your agency's services and you gave them a big commission, a big incentive, that's going to pretty much drain all your profitability. It's going to drain everything because a good salesperson wants to be paid $250,000. And so if you have a $100,000 business and you want to bump your sales up and you have somebody who wants to make $250,000, tell me where you're going to make that from. They need to sell, basically, they need to sell between $1 and $2 million in business to get what they want. And then you have to be able to deliver very efficiently on that $1 to $2 million in business for that to happen. And so that's why it becomes better in a partner scenario, because that person has a vested interest and they're not doing it just for their salary. They're doing it for ownership of a company. You can also pay them in two ways. Instead of giving them a sales commission, you can actually pay them in equity. And then you can also do dividends or with distributions and stuff like that. So there's advantages to being a business partner with somebody who's good at sales because it can boost things and there's not as much pressure out there. Now, if you're great at sales, then maybe you should look at a partner who can both do whatever your agency does, but then also somebody who's very good at the financial piece. They can understand financial statements, they can read it, they can be the profitability czar of your business. Those make sense. Or, I mean, because what ends up happening is if it's just two struggling people, say that you're both freelancers making $100,000 a year, and you think if you combine, you can make $300,000 a year, and you can each divide that 50,000. That's great. If that's all you ever want to do in the future is just to like basically make a little bit more money and have somebody who's your partner in crime and never expand, then that's not bad either. You definitely want to do a 1 + 1 = 3 scenario minimum. Like you have to be able to make your business 3 times the size of what yours is now by joining forces with somebody. But the problem is if you want to do that 1 + 1 = 3 scenario and you're both just, complementary in skills, you basically brought on a partner who got you over, you just gave somebody 50% of the ownership of your company for a hurdle that you probably could have done on your own. Like if you just plugged away at it more and you just sort of figured it out, you could have gotten to that part. So you just gave away half your company for an extra $50,000. And then, as it goes on, that can be dangerous because it gets out of sync. And so taking on partners, it just, one, you're ready because you work with somebody and it makes sense to work with them, but then it doesn't mean that it's the right idea to bring them on. So that's where this other stuff comes in. Hopefully that helps a little bit, Jason. Awesome, Jason. Glad you like that. Okay, any other questions? Or I'll fade into the night. That's dramatic. Okay. If I were to take on a partner, what does a discussion look like about percentage of ownership? Um, it what I would do is I would look at what the company's worth now and then what it's going to be worth afterwards, and then decide upon that. So if you're um, generally speaking, your agency is worth 1 to 2 times your revenue in a year. That's probably what I would say. So if you're making 100 grand or 200 grand, it's worth that. Maybe you can get 1.5 times that. So I would plan it off of that. So if you can get that, so basically your value that you've created already to this point, depending on your revenue, is worth, let's just call it 300 grand. So say that you bring in a partner and they are immediately going to bring in a book of business that's going to end up making your company worth much more. Or if they're going to bring in $200,000 in revenue, then that might be a case where you could do 50-50 partnership because you're bringing 300,000, or not 50-50, but 60-40 or something like that, because you're bringing in 300,000 and that in book value, and then they're bringing in an extra 200,000 in cash or in revenue. So that's going to be worth 40% of the company in theory, if they can pull it off. Now, I would make them vest in some way. I'd make sure that they deliver on what they're doing. And also, since you were the founder, you should get more value if you're the one who started off, because unless you're merging companies, then there's some value in getting to that 100,000. Because honestly, it's a lot harder to get to 100,000 than it is to go from 100 to 200,000. It's way harder to get to that first 100,000. Now, as an individual, it does tail off. I don't know any companies that are just one person doing consulting or agency work who are making more than 250,000. And so there's a tail off point. So it's hard to get up to 100,000, easier to get to 200,000. And then it gets hard again if you want to get beyond that, because there's just only so many hours and so many contracts you can handle. And so that's their thing, is that they might, if they help you scale, if they help you get beyond that, then it can be worthwhile. But you got to give value to you owning the company. Now, in one of the lessons, I do talk about how there's several different valuation models. One is like the 20% model, where you give 20% to each of the different major functions. And so you divide that up, and then you see who's doing it. That's when you decide who's going to do each of those things. And then each one gets 20% based on how much they do. But that's when people start the company at the same time. You're already the founder, and so somebody else is coming in on top of that. That means that you wouldn't give them as much as you would if you started at the exact same time, unless they bring in like equal shares and you merge the companies. Then it would make sense to do it that way. How did you just describe the agency valuation of agency? Yeah, it's honestly, we do it, Jason. I don't know the numbers at the top of my head. We do a lesson on it, so make sure to watch the lesson about the valuation, about what's the agency worth. It's in module 4, I believe. Man, it's late here. It's almost 9 o'clock. So just forgive me on that one, but it's in that lesson. And yeah, I mean, I think I've heard all kinds of numbers being thrown out for what an agency is worth. I've heard EBITDA. I've heard profit. Or EBITDA is like earnings before interest. It's like basically your net profit. I've heard 3 to 6 times net profit is a number that I've heard a lot. And then I've also heard 1 times revenue. I've heard 2 times revenue. But when you think about those numbers, they're totally different, aren't they? Like usually if we're advocating a 15% to 20% profitability, then it would have to be 5 times profit to equal 1 times revenue. And so I don't know the exact number. It's whatever somebody's willing to pay you. And so there are valuation specialists who will tell you exactly what your company's worth based on how much money you have, and then where your revenue growth is going to. So I don't know exactly I don't know the exact equation off the top of my head. Sorry about that. Great. Sean, thanks for joining us. I'm not sure if you're still on anymore, but it's great to have you on. I think you just jumped off. So, Jason, Peter, any questions? Awesome, Peter. Nice to talk. Nice to hear from you too. Awesome, guys. Well, this has been good. I appreciate you guys joining me. The next one we're gonna push back a week, so I'll send out an email about that. The next one we're gonna do will be the August 29th, most likely somewhere around there. I'm in Portugal, Jason. I'm here for another 2 months, which is pretty cool. I really like it here, and it's really chill. I have this like fiber optic internet connection, and I've been working like 12 hours a day, and then on the weekends we go out and explore Portugal. So it's been fun. It's not all glamour though; it's mostly work, but it's been awesome. So cool, guys. I'm gonna sign off then. It was nice to chat with you all. And if you have any follow up questions, definitely let me know. And I look forward to talking to you on the 29th of August. Oh, and the computer box is back there. I can't see it. It's like right. Actually, you can't see my cursor, can you? How do I point? It's right there. It's behind that little chair. So, the computer box has made the trip. And yes, thank you for pointing that out. All right. On that note, I think it's time for us all to sign off. So I'll talk to you guys later.